So good morning, everyone. So let us start our class. So today we will finish our exception. Hope. So exception. A briefly review of the exception. So this is the case caused by incorrect input or abnormal cases. Okay, so exception is a case caused by the incorrect input or abnormal cases. This one is not the error. So it's not your program problem, but you should think about the things that the input may be incorrect or by accident to give you the wrong input. This one is the exception, and we want to handle the exception. So handle the exception, we have two ways. The previous you have already learned one way is, I think most of you deal with the IO exceptions, is at the method. At the method, you will throw actually the program throws the exception. Okay, for example, this one I didn't touch last class, but this one I think you should have already learned, know the way, because I through your project I have already seen this one, so I assume that you have already attached this portion in Java 1. So public something, I say that, okay, the main method, okay, so the main method have some kind of string arguments, right? So something like that. I don't write anything. But I have the main method, and then you can do throws. So sometimes if you want to do the IO exception, you will throw IO exception, right? If you do the file reading and writing, you probably will throw IO exception. This throws actually tell the system that this one means you tell the system. So you tell the Java virtual machine to say that, okay, if any IO problem happens, just stop the code and show the problem, right? So show the problem, actually show the exception, show the IO exception. Okay, so this is one way. So this is the first way you can do. And the second way is we talked in the last class, we have the try block of code and catch certain exception class name with variable. So variable, and then you catch this code, and then you can also have the code after try catch block of code. So inside you may have some lines may cause exception, right? So you can do some lines may cause exceptions, and then I catch it. Of course, you can do multiple catch. So you have exception class name 1, and then exception class name 2. Okay, some variable. So this one is class name 2. You can do another, you can catch another exceptions, you can catch more. Okay, so you can do more. Okay, so then the running is if the code is processed normally, if the code is processed normally, it will only process a try block of code, right? So the first thing, if it's normal case, then it's just run the try block of code and skip the catch block of code. Okay, so this is the first thing. If it's running okay, so it will do the only try block of code and skip the catch block of code. If the code comes to the first abnormal case, so it will run to the first line calls the abnormal, then it will stop the process, stop the try block of code immediately. So means it will not run the code after that line, and then find the first proper exception class to handle the exception. Okay, so it will skip the remaining code in the try block of code, and then try to look at, okay, whether the first catch with this exception class can handle this one or not. Then it will try the second, and try the third, try the fourth if you have. So, and then it will do the first match, so the first proper match. So this exception class to handle the exception. So if both the first and the second can handle this one, then it will use the first, okay? So this one is try to find the first proper exception. So the first proper exception to handle the exception. Then we have two cases. If there is no, so if there is no proper exception to handle, then the program will stop. Okay, so if there's no proper exception class to handle this exception, then the program will stop, and default exception handler will be called. This is the things you see. The program is stopped. The program stops and show the red line to say that, okay, this is error. This is what happens. This is handled by which class, right? So this is the first thing. If there's no proper exception class to handle, otherwise it will run the first proper exception. So it will run the first proper catch block of code, and then process the remaining code after the catch, after the whole catch. Okay, so for example, if the first one is the proper catch, so catch this exception, then it will run the first block of code, catch block of code, and then we'll skip all the other catch block of code and go to the code after. Okay, so this is the try block of code. Okay, so now today what we will learn, we will do three things. One is what happens if I have multiple methods. So I want to I call the other method, and my current method does not generate any problem, but my calling method cause the problem. So handle, so the first one is handle the exception caused of the other method. Okay, so this is the first thing we will deal with in our today's class. So we will do the first thing, and then the second thing is throw the exception. Okay, so I want to throw the exception. So this one is looks like when I run some code and find, oh, there's an exception there, but I don't want to handle now, then I can throw the exception and let the other method to handle. So this one is throw the exception and let other method to handle it. Let the other method or default handler to handle it. So I don't want to process it, but I want other guys to handle it. Okay, so this one is the throw exception. And the last one is we can also create. So the second portion is throw, and then the last one is create our own exception. Okay, so this is the schedule for today's class. So I will through examples to see these three materials. Okay, the first one is handle the exception of the other method. Okay, so I will stop sharing. What we will do is I will increase the NetBeans. Oh, before I start my first example, the last time we deal with the exception example, we can use the get message, and we can also print the stack. Okay, we can print the stack. Here is print the trace. Okay, so I do a little bit showing here. So it's the same thing as you see for the default handler, you will see what happens. So if you do the get message, it just give you the problem. So the problem, but you don't know where is the problem. If you want to debug it, so it will give you the real problem if you print the stack trace. If you, here is what we say the cause the problem is in.txt is not exist. So it shows that this line of code caused the problem. Okay, so just a small, a little bit words we left last class. Okay, so I can move forward. Okay, so let us see one example. I call it multiple method. Okay, multiple method. Okay, in this multiple method, in the main method, I will call a string. So in order to save my time, so I will do it in a short one. So I will try block of code and try to. So my strategy is I will let main method calls my own method, and then let the own method call the string process method. And this one has the problem. Okay, has the problem. Okay, has the abnormal case. Okay, so this is my schedule, but I will handle the exception. I don't want the string process to handle the exception, so I will let the exception will be handled at the main method. Okay, so at the beginning, I will say that, okay, will be handled by the default method. So default method, default handler means I don't try to handle anything. So I don't try to use my own word to handle. So this time I will call my own method and I will create my own method. Okay, so I will call my own method and let it be a public method, static my own method. So my own method, I will call the string process method. Okay, so this one is just the example to see that what will happen. Of course, when you do your own code, it will not that easy, but I will do just to show that the multiple methods, what will happen. Okay, so public. Okay, so the string process, at my string process, what I will do is I will let the string equals to 1, 2, 3. Okay, and I want to print out the string char at 3. Okay, so by accident, I just want to try catch character at 3. Of course, I forget. So when I do the code, I forget. Okay, this one is only have 3. So it will be 0, 1, 2. So this one will string out of bound, right? Just string index out of bound. So string index out of bounds. So this will cause the problem. But I don't handle it. So this one will cause the problem. So I have multiple. So you will see that it print like the stack, right? So it will, the first line will say that, okay, the main method, the last line, actually the last line is the first guy call this method. So the main method called the multiple method, and then in the multiple method Java 20, the line 20, it calls my own method. So this is the stack. So the stack means this one, the main is the first call, but it's at the bottom. And then my own method is be called by main method. And then string process was called by the my own method. So this one gives me the problem. And what is the problem? Any questions? I hear some guys talking. Okay, so the string process want to call the character add method. So this is the last core method, is the character add method. And then at this moment, it caused the problem, right? It's the problem name is string index out of bounds exception. Okay, so this one is a handle. If there's no one to handle this problems, just like we discussed the last time. So just several minutes ago, so it will be handled by the default handler. The default handler will tell you the message is where it happens. This is the stack. So the last one is the first calling. So this is the stack. Okay, when you go to the data structure, we will talk about the stack. And this is actually the method that caused the problem. Okay, char at, I call this one. And what's the problem? It's the string index out of bounds exception. Okay, so this time it means that I cannot, this one is handled by the default. So if I don't want to handle by default, I can handle, of course, this time I can do handle here. And the catch, what's the name for that one? So the name for that one is string. Let me see, I copy this guy. So as so this time I will course I will say the string is, so I will say out of bound. Okay, so this time I can do like this. Let's try and catch it. So it will say out. Sorry. So out of bound. So out of bound. So it will catch it. This is a normal thing we did in the last class. When the problem happens, I can catch it at here. So, but this time I don't want to handle it at the specific method, because the one thing is it looks like my code is very ugly. It's a try catch everywhere. So we say the exception, the second possible solution is the exception will be handled at where at the place it happens, right? So, but this one is not good also, because if I have so many methods and I handle it at the place it happens, you will see a lot of try catch block of code. Then this one is make your stuff very, very ugly. So then what I can do now, so the handling, I don't want to handle it at the specific method, but I want to handle it at the main method, which is calling it. So the third way is the exception will be handled at the method which calls it. So which calls it, the method which calls it, and since main method calls my own method, my own method called the string process. So this is like a chain. So I can handle at my own method or handle at the main method. One way we do is we will handle at the main method. So let it call the method out and catch it. So that's error, out of bound. So I can catch it at here. So when it happens, so it will do like this way. So this is a good sign if you have multiple. So you call multiple methods, and then these methods will generate multiple problems from different methods. Then you can just catch it at one place. So your code will just do like this. I catch at one place and let the other methods looks pretty clean. So they do the function what they do. So this is, say this one is only focused on the string process without consider any kind of abnormal cases. But if abnormal cases happens, it can catch at the main method, at that upper layer method. So those methods will handle all this kind of thing. So your code will be clean. And this is a good manner if you make the methods looks like exactly what I wanted to process. So far so good. Any question? So any question? Okay, if there's no question, then we going on. So the next one is this guy. I want to exactly tell what kind of problem happens. Then I can do another thing is I can throw a specific. So this one is the exception, which I don't know this one may happen or may not, but I just handle it. So another way we can do is a good manner way is as a normal programmer, like the previous programmer is handle the exception explicitly. So we want to do is handle the exception explicitly and still use the manner is the finally it will handle that method which calls it. So this time I can do a good thing is I want to let it equals to, for example, I let it equals to 3, and if string dot character at I, oh no, so if the string dot length, do I have length? Yes, length is smaller or equal to I. So the length is smaller or equal to I. So here the length is 3, right? My I is 3, so I cannot do that thing. I can do one thing is throws string. I say that, okay, this one is not good. So I will throw, I throw a new, so I throw a new exception. And give some message associate. Maybe I will do like this. Okay, I will give you new message, and then I will throw the new string index out of bound exception, and else I will do. So this one is the normal thing is when I deal with the methods, I will first do the check to see that whether it's out of bound or not out of bound. If it's out of bound, then I will say I throw this exception. I can do the exception and throw it. Okay, make sure this is the throw exceptions. And then in this time, I can use EX. Since I throw it, it handled at the main method. I will get message. What is the message I pass? is out of bound. So you will see this one, I can throw it. Oh, now this time you will see still the out of bound message, but it's more clear, maintained by the user, right? So the programmer can handle it, and this is more polite. Okay, so you can directly call this one and it will throw the message, or you can explicitly use throw as a keyword. And this is the the keywords. New means I want to create the new instance of one exception class. This exception class is called string index out of bounds exception. Then this one will be called at here. So this one give me more flexible. So what I can do is I can also, even if I don't know what kind of exactly exception it is, I can say I throw exception and then handle this exception at this place. Well, it becomes quite easy. But if you do like this is not the exactly exception. So not exactly like the string out of bound exception. So illegal, I can also do illegal exception. I can throw. Then if this one is not the specific exception, but it's very, very general and it's not an exception. It's a specific like the string out of bounds exception. This is very, very specific exception. Then you should put things at here. So you want to let the system know that you throws the new exception. So then if the method calls it, it should throws exception. And then when your main method do that one, you handle it. So handle this exception. That's why when you do the IO exception, you will say, okay, here void main throws IO exception. Why you do this? Because this one is not a specific exceptions provided exactly the problem. Because IO exception is very broad exception, and maybe you read is the file not exist. This one is maybe the file not found is kind of the specific for that one. But since you use more general, then you should tell the system you throws this exception, this more general exception. So every method should throws exceptions, and this one will be handled at the finally, if it's handled at one method, then you don't need to throw it anymore. But if you don't handle at any place, then you should throws, finally, you should throws at the main method. Okay, so far so good. Any question? Before any question before I move to the own exception creation? Okay, so no answer. So I will continue to the next one. Is the last portion is create your own exception. So let me share my whiteboard. Okay, so the last one is create your own exception. So why we need own exception? Because sometimes we may have the exception which is not handled by Java. This is an example is when you deal with bank account, you do not allow the negative initial balance, right? So you cannot have the negative initial balance. So this one is when you create your bank account. If you give me the negative, I should tell the customer and this exception happens. You provide the negative value. So, but this one you cannot handle by any default exceptions because this default exceptions for the illegal argument exception, this one should be if I provide the real number, then it's fine, even it's negative. So then this is the problem. I need to create my own exceptions for particular problems. Then this one, how do I create? I need to create, since this one is in a inheritance environment, so I should create for certain kind of way. This one is I create my own exception. Okay, let us look at our example and see what happens. Okay, so let us go back to NetBeans. And then I will do create the new thing is my exception example. Okay, so this is my own exception example. So in my own exception examples, I will create one class. I will create one class is called the bank account. Okay. Okay, in the bank account, I have this kind, I should give the initial values. So public bank account. Okay, so double balance. Okay, this is initial balance to create. So this time I will check if the balance is smaller than 0. I want to throw my own exception. I call it negative initial balance exception. And this time, I want to say that, okay, I pass in is the balance. Okay, so of course I need to have another class. So I need to have another class. So this class should be exactly the same as this guy is a negative initial balance exception. Okay, so this is the exception. Okay, in the bank account, I have balance, right? Private integer, private double balance. So this time else this dot balance equals to balance. Okay, so I do a very simple one. So the major things for me is to create my own negative initial balance exception. Since this is the exception, so it will extend the exception class. Okay, then I will create a, since it's the normal class, so I can have the constructor, right? I put the constructor. And then I will call something. I will create a certain kind of things is called balance, the problem of the balance, right? So you give me certain kind of balance. So I will do is I will put the balance cannot be negative. So put here. So I give the exceptions and the balance cannot be, the initial balance cannot be negative. Okay, so this is what I do. So in here, I will do the string message. And then in the, so exception class has one constructor. I should call the super. So I put this message there. Okay. I will call the super message. I put the message there. So of course you can pass in another things. If you don't like this way, you can pass in, since it's the class, right? I can do one thing balance, and then I can do double balance. Oh, super balance. Maybe not too, it's too complicated. So I just do this one and say that the initial balance cannot be negative. Okay, so this one is the super. I may put more things is my own exception plus. Okay, so plus some message, my own exceptions. So this one is the exception class. I call the specific constructor and say that this is my own exception and the message cannot be zero or cannot be negative. So my own exception, the balance cannot be zero. And then in here, I will call bank account, a account equals to new bank account. For example, I do -2, okay, in order to create. And since this one is not the Java specific exception, so what you need to do is you should throws negative. So you should throws okay, so since it's not the specific one, so you should throw this new exceptions. And since there is no handling, New bank account. So since it's not handled by the bank account, so I throw it away. Or you can do is I try to make sure this one will be handled at the main method. So same thing we did discuss in today's class, right? So I should catch it or handle it at somewhere, or the default will do, but you should throw it away. So catch home. Okay, I get the message. Right, this is the whole thing. So the first one, you create your own exception and extends the exception class. And this one tells the system that you want to use the exception class, and it's the subclass of exception class. So this is my own exception. And then this is the name of the exception. And here is I just do as a normal inheritance. So I call the specific constructor. So this is I create the message for that specific constructor. And so that if you call the get message, because this one is provided by exception class, so you can inherit it, get message, print stack trace. So all these things provided by the exception class. So you can use that method immediately because it's inherited. And then in my bank account, since I don't handle at this method, even if this one is a constructor, it's fine. So you just throw it away. So I will tell the system the exactly what kind of my own exception will be throw. This is the only way you can throw your own exception, because this one is it's not the Java exception by default. So this one you should throw explicitly. And then since it will not handle at this method, so it will throw it away, hope the other method will handle it, or the default will handle. The default will be handled like here. So this time I want to handle it at the main method, which calls the constructor of bank account, where it calls because you use new to create it. So I will catch it at the main method. If you don't catch it, since this is very specific, Java doesn't know. So you can throw this away. So this is the whole picture. And you will see my own exception. The initial balance cannot be negative. So the whole thing. So any questions about the own exception? So the practice will be look like this. So ask the user to give the word, give one word, give one password, and this password should be at least 6 characters long. 6 characters long. If the password satisfied the requirement, satisfies the requirement, print the password. Otherwise, show the message, show the message, show the message. This message should be like the password is too short. Okay, and this is the basic things I want to do, and you should through your code should handle the short password as an exception. Okay, this is the exception. So you just ask the customers to provide, and if it's okay, then you print this password. Otherwise, show the message to say that the password is too short. Your code should handle the short password as an exception. So I don't want you say just print out all the things, but you should handle as an exception. Okay, so give you 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes, I will show the answer. Okay, let us start. Okay, so let us see our code. So this one is what I am doing. So the password check. So this is the normal. So I scanner. So let the keyboard to give me the result. To scan the keyboard to put in your password, and then I do one more little thing is I will while loop. So if you don't give me the valid password, then I will keep asking then for the next round. But if you give me the correct one, I just print it out. So then stop the while loop. So here, the thing is, okay, I have the while loop. It's just keep checking whether your password is valid or not valid. And then I get the password. Okay, and try this one. If this is the greater than or equal to 6, the 6 characters long, then it's true, means, okay, the password is valid. And I will print out the password. Okay, so this is the normal case. Otherwise, I will through the new exception. This exception is called short password exception. So this one is the password is too short, and it will be catched at here because this is the method only at here. So it will do the same, so catch short word exception and print out the message. Okay, so this one is how do I create this one? Short password exception. I will create the one class extends the exception. So use the short password exception, and you pass in the message, and then I call the super. So this is in the exception class. So that's the total code, and I will post on the Blackboard for you to study later. This is the whole procedure for the practice, and it's time for our class. So see you next week. If you have any question, you can ask now, or I will see you next week.